I mean, I remember a couple of years back making a friend of mine making her listen to Meshuggah, and she was not in the know at all, and she was like, "This is not music." So that's another way of experiencing the whole thing. And I think we have a perfect segue into your carbon paper about rhythmic parallax. There is this whole introduction to Dr. Lucas' paper on the rhythms of Obzen, and how she does an amazing job at describing this kind of a dichotomy between and this like different embodied experiences and these different ways of living the music of Meshuggah, either in the pit or counting or a mix of both, because now she's studying the way the lights and the whole engineering there like changes the experiences of people. And so yeah, you have this short article about lights out and this like longer paper about car bomb and rhythmic parallax, studying the song Mordial.
Black and Battery.
Oh, sorry,
from
the
Mordial,
album Mordial. But yeah. And I wonder if you would you care to explain a little bit about explain this idea of rhythmic parallax and how it relates to what we've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the basic idea is that I've kind of, and this again came out of transcribing Black and Battery, and I kind of was getting at this earlier with the lights out thing, which is much shorter. But I kind of had to make some. I realized while I was transcribing that I had to make some choices. I could write these moments as tempo changes. I could write them as tempo modulations. I could write them as at the same tempo with changing meters. And it all kind of, it wasn't clear. And there are a lot of more kind of intricate questions about how I choose to write these. And I basically came to the conclusion that each one of these is kind of equally real for different listeners. The biggest distinction being between what kind of casual listeners, like even like this is kind of how I still hear it mostly. And so that on the one hand, and on the other hand, how the band probably thinks of this music. So kind of the classic examples are in Car Bomb, you have a lot of things that sound like their tempo changes because the cymbal starts, or there's like a new backbeat at a different tempo. But from another perspective, it's a change of grouping where it's like you're going from the cymbal hitting, like Lights Out is kind of the classic, or not classic, but one of the most straightforward examples where it's the cymbal hits every 6/16 notes, then every 5, then every 4, then every 3, and it does that a couple times. So it's like, and listening to that for the first few times, I was like, man, they're just, speeding up a little bit each time. And then you kind of start digging in and slowing it down and counting along. And it turns out that there's kind of this other way of thinking about it. But it started me onto this idea where the way we normally talk about rhythm is that there's a rhythm and a meter, and you kind of, there's one correct way, and then maybe you can mishear it or whatever. Or there's like metric ambiguity where you have some pattern in 12/8 and you can hear it, the dotted quarter having the beat or the half note having the beat or whatever. But this is kind of like at a more fundamental level, like what one person thinks is the tempo is, the meter for someone else. And then I go even further in the paper and talk about how at a micro timing level, none of these tempos are quite stable because, they're not playing with a click track, it seems. And there's all sorts of kind of the basically this idea that there is something called the rhythm and there's something called a meter and something called a tempo. Those are all problematic in this music. And then I guess the implication is that for all music, you can kind of make these claims.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You describe them as auditory hallucinations in the sense that they have a bag of tricks. So what you mentioned, moving the China symbol, which is traditionally set, and like making it sound like it's, making it mark different groupings, and then it feels like all of a sudden they are playing tuplets, and it's like at a faster tempo or at a slower tempo.
Yeah.
It's and also the 9/8 trick.
Yeah.
That they mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Where they have these very fast measures of 9/8 that if you're listening, it feels like the beats kind of the same, kind of steady, isochronous, not changing. But really it's 5+4. So it's like this subtle, like kind of wonkiness to it, where for them, they're thinking 9/8, but probably for a lot of listeners. And this is something that the guitarist said in an interview, specifically, it's for the band they're thinking 9/8, whereas it comes across as this kind of different rhythmic thing.
Yeah, but I guess there the idea, Christopher Hasty's idea of meter as a projective process really helps, because, for example, referring to your earlier paper, Discordant Systems, you present language 1 and 2 on the one hand, and you say that like they are moving back and forth in from two different metrical paradigms, and then you take Meshuggah's Nebulous, and you say that no, this is not a tempo change because there is what you call a polymetrical cadence, and which is super interesting. But when I listen to the song, I mean, I cannot not hear tempo change. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I can't either. And I have a couple things. One, it's man, I've come up with a lot of crazy terms.
I love it.
It's kind of, I guess you're encouraged to that. It's like, if you can
building your own memes, your own
find something and slap a name on it. There you have an article.
But I love it because I feel like I'm in the know, because I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's like such a high achievement, like a hard thing to unlock polymetrical cadences.
Yeah.